What's the most annoying question you ever get?
The most annoying questions almost always center around Miss Universe and that whole era of my life, because it's such a chapter that it's almost like that was not me. So anything about that, I always I'm like, wow, we're still talking about that?
Yeah, okay. Great. I'm not asking that question.
Depending on the angle.
They say everybody has a book in them. What would your book be about?
I had a chapter in a book that Michelle Borel did, and I called it Who She Feels She Is.
Right.
Which is the name of a collective that I was very proud to be a part of, with a group of women who are all who she feels she is women. And that will be the tone of the chapter, or the tone of the book, I should say. It's just like this whole idea of how dare you be the fullest version of yourself.
I like that. I have no idea what my book would be about. Well, no. My book would probably be like resilience or something.
Yeah. But a Melism of that.
Yeah,
word.
Exactly. When people look at you, what do you think they see or think?
Well, that's a contextual question, I guess, depending on where I am and where in the world I am. But let's just take Trinidad. Obviously, this is where I live. This is where I'm from. It's funny. I always think the lens of what I think people see is more critical. But the response I almost often get is so much more of a place of not admiration, because that's sort of, not the right energy, but just true, like, acknowledgement of, I guess, maybe what I hope is what they see in me that they see in themselves, which is possibility. And the way in which dreams can come to fruition. And for a lot of people, I realize, like, that's what I mean to them. That there's the possibility that we can do anything we put our minds to, and whatever the memory of me doing that, particularly on Project Runway, means to people is almost always what I receive. That's not to say all other sundry that people may think and not say, but I choose to receive the parts that fuel me, and that's, oftentimes that's really what I get, is like people really wanting to acknowledge, like, somehow they saw in me something that lit something in them, and that is just amazing.
Why did critical come up first for you, though?
I guess because, only a year before I won Runway, I had this very public scandal, and there's not a lot of distance to me in my actual timeline of my life between those two things. And so one always felt married to the other, even though I suppose one completely decimated the other,
right,
from a public perception standpoint. But I guess my memory of it was so tied that I can't help but assume the critical before the positive. And so I walk in this space of, one may always be one is the door behind the other,
Can I just say, you handled that scandal amazingly, though, because I remember it could have been the year after or something. It was Pan Semis, and I saw you walking across. We didn't know each other then, or did we?
Probably not, because we really got to know each other in the lead up to Runway.
Yeah, like late 2010, kind of. Yeah. But I saw you walking across the field in these like knee-high boots, short shorts, a kind of vest, like embellished or something.
Memory.
And I remember thinking, she's a bad bitch. She's bad. And I love how you were just like moving through space and time. And it seemed like you do not give a fuck. And I love that. My mic fell. Sorry. I probably got telling myself, got it. Help.
Yeah, so just kind of repeat what they said.
Repeat that you're a bad bitch.
Yeah. Make sure to include
you're a bad bitch. And I love your energy throughout that entire moment, because to me, it seemed like you were not about to let it define you. And I love that. but I also like to exist in reality. And if you don't mind,
So we're here for?
the day it happened, what are you thinking? What's going on? What was that day like?
You know, no one's ever asked me that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it wasn't one day, because what happened was I had just launched my clothing line a year before that, and I was invited to show a collection for the Queen when she came for Chogam.
Okay.
So that's 2007, 2008, 2009. Wow, really aging myself. And it was such a huge honor, as you can imagine. I was a very, very young emerging designer, and I was one of 10 designers alongside Mei Ling, Claudia, the works, right? And me. So for all intents and purposes, I didn't belong there from a legacy standpoint. And so somehow, this is where it gets fishy. The committee that was organizing the show got hold of these tapes that were private tapes. We didn't even know that anyone else had them, you know? So that whole thing is a little murky.
So somebody sent it to the committee?
Yeah, somebody sent it to the committee. And the organizers of the show had to come and tell me, for some unknown reason to them, I was being asked to step down from the show, right? So then I spent the next month or two just inquiring, which I thought was in my rights, as to why. Like, it didn't reveal to me. I was playing this guessing game as to why I had been asked to step down from the show. And I guess I pushed very hard. I mean, I wrote to the president's wife. I did everything in my power to just be in the know, you know, which I really felt was my rights. And I wasn't pushing back to be in the show. I just felt like it should be clear why, you know. Well, I think whoever was behind all this decided that was, you know, they were not happy with it. And so it got sent to the radio. And it was the radio station that called me and emailed it to me. So this is like 2 months on that I've been living in this guessing game.
Yeah.
Only to then see one of the 8 tapes that it was me. And my then at the time boyfriend, now husband, you know, in a private moment. And yeah, I mean, I sunk to the ground. Like, I was already in a state of defiance because I didn't know what it was. Only then to have to humble myself to know that it was really something significant. It was material.
Right.
It was real. And it was me in this very exposed scenario.
Yeah.
You know? I can't tell you. I mean, it's like it felt like the world ended. It felt like, and only 2 years before my brother died, you know? So to experience something again where it felt like nothing will ever compare to the moment finding out Pilar died. But there was a similarity in this absolute shock. Like, my life was about to change.
Yeah.
And I knew it. And I didn't know then the magnitude that it was not 1 tape, it was 8. And it was so revealing and it was so personal.
I didn't know it was 8.
8. And it was also completely outside of my own, like, involvement, you know? Like, this was not Kim Kardashian. This was not like,
exactly.
I was trying to make $1. Like, none of that. Like, we live in a country where that is not the culture.
You don't do that, right?
Like, no one is benefiting from that. So no, I mean, my life changed in that absolute moment, and it did feel like a death, and it felt like a death of, like, my dignity and my privacy and my integrity, and I was still Miss Trinidad Tobago.
Yeah.
So there was also that, you know.
What is the next step from that moment?
I can't tell you. I remember, to be honest. I mean, I was in a daze, you know. The first next step was telling my parents. So you can imagine how that went.
How? Because, listen, I know my father.
Correct.
And if it wasn't, I already know, like, I can plan everything he's going to say and do and feel and all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine?
And you're the only girl. Like, how?
And my brothers. And the thing is, it was, by the time it actually went live, it was on everybody's phone. It was on DVDs all around Port of Spain. It was literally...
Not a DVD, man.
DVDs. Okay?
On the corner of...
And in Movie Zone.
Jesus. Movie Zone.
Okay.
Anya.
It was the 10th most Googled thing in the world by the time it got to Jay Leno. Okay,
So-
this is not small.
This was
Okay.
not small at all. How the hell do you move forward? And because something I've always said, and I joke about it, sometimes I'm like, hey, just if somebody using my phone or whatever, I'll be like, yeah, just if you see any news, just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
scroll past or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
you know, it's funny, haha. But so when I first started working in reproductive health, sexual and reproductive health and rights, so it was ingrained in me from very early on, like, you are not going to shame me with me.
Yeah.
You know? So when I saw you at Pan, I was like, yeah, she's on the same wave. Like, at that point, it was probably so
Yes,
many
it was
months or,
past,
past. But how do you let people know that you've already moved on and you've already decided, like, this is not going to be my life and you cannot hold this against me in Trinidad?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, Wise and I were still, in a relationship, and we were defiant together.
Good.
Which did ostracize me from my family, because for my parents and my mother in particular, that was very challenging. She really not that it was something anti-Wired, it was more she wanted me to be much less defiant, and Mailing had a show right after it went public, and I went.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as the media would do, we ended up on the cover of the newspapers day after day after day, because it was just so salacious. Like,
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with, this is
We
like
love a
stuff people
bacchanal.
want to
Yeah, we
know,
love
and so like
bacchanal in here.
I fed into that. Unfortunately, I was too naive to know that all I was doing was feeding that. But I do think that it was the fuel for the storyline which ensued, which was what you just said. Like, I kept going out, I kept working, I kept showing up in places. Like, as far as I was concerned, I didn't do anything wrong. So why should I be ashamed?
Exactly.
All of what everybody else was feeling was their stuff, and I didn't know that. I couldn't articulate that then, but I knew it in myself. And I did not feel why at 26 or whatever age I was, I should be hiding,
Yeah.
and this was my man. This was not some random
Exactly.
self-serving exercise.
Yeah.
And it was our private intellectual property, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So even from a legal perspective, it was wrong. In my opinion, everybody watched it was in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They had a choice, I did not have a choice for it to be revealed. So anyway, I think in that era, like that whole year, I spent seething with rage about the fact that I was being made to seem in some way wrong, when I knew that was not the case. And so I think I stepped into the world with that energy, and I refused to be victimized, But I can say that I was angry, and that's what I had to let go. And it took me a year and a lot of work. I kind of led the charge. He did a lot of inner work that I then finally agreed to do, and like actively, we both did these sort of programmatic self-actualization type things. And like, that's when I learned to own my role in what happened, take accountability for the fact that yes, I was in the videos, I did make that choice, and I played a role, and I played a role in other people's pain, and my parents and my brothers, and I had to own that, and that freed me. And that's when I started to realize, like, all the pain I received was not my pain.
Yeah.
So much of it was projected on me. So much of it was other people's discomfort with what they saw. And I could hold that and acknowledge it and honor it and not own it.
Yeah.
And that's when it became, in many ways, the best thing that ever happened, because there was a real watershed moment in my personal evolution that happened because of that scandal. Not because of the scandal itself, but because of how deep it made me go to own my journey and own my choices, you know, and not blame anybody else, because I did spend a year blaming everybody. And that was painful, and that was more painful than it was worth,
What in your actual upbringing made you the person that believed that you could be that defiant and even against your parents?
Well, I think I'd be grasping to pinpoint one or, anything singular that gave me that defiance. I really think that to a large degree, it's something like, I look at my daughter who's 3 and she has it. And I don't think I gave it to her. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's nurture. I think that's nature. Because me and my third brother Eve and my sixth brother Will, we all have it. I think we were just born with a certain level of, like, I exist in the world as this person, and I don't know another way to be. And, like, I think there's something also just about maybe being also the only girl, and, like, I spent a lot of my life alone in the culture of my family with only girl, 5 boys, and I navigated a lot of my, like, teenage life by myself, you know? And I think I was always different too from my friends who were, like, you know, all very, very bright and become very successful, but not creatives. And so, like, in every situation, I'm always the anomaly. And maybe there's, like, an otherness that kind of emerged out of that. But by 16, I owned it, you know? I knew that I wasn't going to do medicine. I knew I wasn't going to follow in my friends' sort of journeys of, like, Ivy Leagues. And, you know, I just knew, like, I wasn't the same. And I was either going to own that or I was going to suffer. So by the time this happened, I'd already gone to art school. I lived in New York for 5 years. Like, I was like, fuck it. Like, this is who I am. This thing, if I had done it from a place of malintent, self-serving, selfishness, fine. Then it would have been a different story. But I think because it was genuinely my self-exploration with this person that I was actually together with, and it was vulnerable. That's the thing that people don't seem to realize. Like, it was extremely vulnerable.
It was very vulnerable.
Like, 1 or 2 of the tapes might have been a little sexy, but a lot of it was not. Like, it was raw. It was just him and I, you know what I mean? Like, this was very intimate. And, like, who wants that? Like, that's what I kept questioning. Like, would I have done this? Did you watch these things? Like, this is not something you would just put out there.
Yeah.
Like, such deep intimacy, you know? So I think I was defined from that place of, like, my own version of integrity. Like, there was nothing about this that was designed to hurt anyone, upset anyone, make anyone uncomfortable. If anybody was uncomfortable, it was definitely me. So I guess I knew that, and, like, I had a lot of 100% truth in that. And I think for me, once I stay in that truth, it's really hard for me to vacillate.
I remember you said once that you were basically a nerd growing up.
Yes.
And you didn't get in trouble, like real trouble,
No.
until like maybe 16, 17.
Yeah.
What did trouble look like then?
You know, going to coconuts and getting drunk.
Coconuts!
Like,
Wow, we all.
Yeah, like starting to dress a little bit more provocatively and, like, stepping out of the zone of Catholic girl, you know, straight A's and always in line and going to ballet every day. And my life was school ballet. Like, that was my life until 16. I woke up and I was like, oh, boys and parties and, you know. So
Heavy on the boys.
happy on the boys.
I know that life. Now, as you think of, like, all these different parts and segments of your life, do you think you try to hide parts of yourself from people now, or what? And if you do, why?
I think the last 5 years in particular, I transitioned into a professional space that I think, or I told myself, required a more conservative Anya. You know, I partnered with Massey on this, which I think incredible program called Nudge, and just being in these corporate spaces, like, you know, I think I told myself that I had to code switch a bit into a less creative Anya, more, you know, by the book, kind of being able to speak and use certain words and write emails a certain way and that kind of thing. Which, to be honest with you, was exhausting.
Yeah.
At like 3 years into it, I was like, what am I doing? This is not me. I have to do this work as me.
Yeah.
You know? And it got better. But I still think I'm, like, unlearning some of that. And then in that same time, I became a wife and I became a mother. So it was like 3 new titles all at once. And I think the wife and mother thing too, particularly mother in this context, again, like, I am not the most natural mother, I think. Who is? That's probably an
Did
unfair
you always
thing.
want to be a mom?
No, I didn't. Like, you know, growing up with my mom being a full-time parent and having 6 of us, and knowing how much she has and how much she has still accomplished despite and in spite of, I always thought, let me not do that.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Let me do this.
So much of my mother's life seemed like labor.
Yeah.
You know, and like I know now that she did it because that's how she was raised, and you know, you have to take care of your children, and she was also working, and I'm like, girl, you were tired. Like you didn't. When she used to come home and say, I'm gonna take a 5, please don't bother me, I get it now. Because I'm like, you needed a nap. You needed several naps. Because I'm sure we were annoying.
Listen, it's the age-old cliche of now I get it. And I still don't understand how she did it. And I'm still reconciling, like, just because it's not what I wanted, that doesn't mean it's not what she wanted. And then we've had those conversations up until recently. Like, her life is the life she chose. And I think choice is something that comes up a lot for me. Once you have that autonomy and agency to choose, then you're fine, you know? It's just that I didn't want to choose that. But of course, now that I am, it's incredible. Yeah. It's just that in this context, I don't feel a lot of freedom. Again, I take a responsibility of how much of this I superimpose on myself. But I don't feel a lot of freedom to be the version of mother that I think I am, you know? As freely. And
do you think you'll be like judged for it or shamed for it?
I think I run away a lot from, like, you know, the more traditional expectation of like, and from day one, I didn't love it. I love my children. Yeah. I don't love mothering. Two different things.
And I think like a lot of people have a hard time reconciling the two. Yeah. Because if you say hate mothering, then people automatically go, oh, so you hate your children.
Exactly.
It's like, no.
Not at all. Completely mutually exclusive. Like, I adore them. They are my teachers. Like, they are mirrors to me. Like, I have learned so much already, and they're only 6 and 3. They hold me to account, you know? But the day-to-day, oh God, I could do without it.
This is the honesty we love. Because so many people would not say that.
This is my point.
Yeah.
But how many people are actually feeling it? First of all, which human? Which human wants to do the same thing every single day,
every day,
in the same way? That is not a human need.
Hard pass. Because it's hard.
It's hard. It is
like
hard.
You love them and you want to entertain them and you want to give them the best and all that good stuff, but get out of my face, little person.
And you know what it is? It's the truth of how they see you. Like, I cannot hide from... I can physically hide, believe me, I've tried. But I cannot hide what I'm feeling from them. Yeah. They feel the energy in another room. They can sense if something's off. You know how difficult that is? You cannot pretend.
But also, he's, you know, he wants to tell you the same story. 52 times.
Mommy, look at this. Mommy, you're not looking. I'm like, stop looking.
Okay, God damn it. I don't want to hear Baby Shark no more. Oh, yes, I'm right there with you. So I asked you once before in a conversation, who are you uninterrupted? And your answer was so interesting to me because you, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. So you mentioned having a conversation with a seer woman, and she told you that in many past lives you've had many past lives where you were a builder of villages. And I see that you did home, you did exhibit A, you did nudge, now you have spool. How does it feel to actualize all of these villages over the years?
First of all, I am mind blown by your note-taking and incredible journalism.
Thank you. You got that right? That was captain. We just got a little dust on the show. Anyway, go.
Having her say that to me at the juncture that she did, which was around the time that Spool and Nudge were both being formed, was incredibly validating and only fueled my ability and my, some drive to manifest these villages more solidly, I guess, because up until then I was just doing it because it's like comes naturally to me. Like I could have won Project Runway and just sort of tracked a sort of, well, if I may say, Christian Seriano path, you know what I mean? Like individual soul success, which I'm not saying I would have achieved, but I could have gone that way, had all the opportunity in the world. But for whatever reason, I was just continuously drawn to sort of bringing everyone along with me. So right after Runway, I founded Carnival, because Carnival was all about, I had so many opportunities with the carnival bands and, you know, design this section, do this party. I just couldn't do it all. And I also wasn't best suited to all of it, you know? So that's when I started to seek out, like, okay, what about Keisha? What about Nikita Hayatali? What about all these people around me who had talent but didn't have the opportunity?
Right.
So we founded this e-commerce platform. We started doing carnivals all over the world, and I didn't design all of them. I couldn't. But I was so thrilled by the opportunity to sort of aggregate all this talent and use this platform and build for everyone to win, ideally, you know?
Yeah.
And so all of that pre-Nudge and Spool was very much my just natural draw. And then ever since this conversation with this incredible lady, who I continue to speak to at important junctures, you know, some people may not believe in this stuff, but for whatever reason, it really helps me ground, you know? I think now I take it on. Like, I consider that to be a skill that I have and one that I should lean into. And every time I have a new phase like I'm about to come up against now, like, how do I serve my natural talent as a designer, but use that for this kind of like wider platform building and aggregation of opportunity and building bridges of access. And so I really do consider it a calling, and if I could do it differently, I would, because it would be straightforward, you know, and more linear. But I enjoy the...
But what is? You know?
But what is. Exactly. What really is. And
Never
this
really
fuels
looks
me.
that way.
Yeah. So yes, it feels amazing. But I do think that a lot of times I'm a little bit ahead of the game, and I have to kind of teach myself a level of patience and endurance to like stay the course long enough to really see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
You know?
When you learn that, teach me.
Yes, I know. I know. We have the same.
Unable.
Yeah.
You also said that you found yourself in the inconsistent, unpinnable, undefinable version of me. And you were always reinventing yourself through clothes, and now you're reinventing yourself through your career. What is next for you? What version are we getting next?
I should really make up notes that anytime you ask me for an interview, it's definitely a turning of a page in a chapter into a new phase, because that happens consistently. You realize that? Pre-Project Runway, post-Project Runway, you know, pre-carnival moments, Spool and Nudge, and now.
Yeah.
I should be afraid of these invitations.
No, we're fine.
So next is a re-emergence of my clothing line brand, which I'm very excited about. Under my name, and but really kind of bringing the ecosystem of my platforms that have been built, Nudge and Spool, and like really creating the ecosystem around that. So let's say in real terms, that means my clothing lines will be produced at Spool,
right?
Which hires the women that we've trained. We've trained up to 94 women from at-risk backgrounds how to produce in the carnival and fashion industry. And so... And
migrant women as well.
Migrant women as well. 70% of the women are all Venezuelan. And so the circularity of being able to design a line that is sustainable in and of itself, because of course in a time like this, you can't produce anything unless thinking about its impact on the environment. Right. I've collaborated with James Hackett, who is, you know, incredibly talented to do all of the print design. I'm working with Vetiver, House of Vetiver, to do the accessories, because of course that also feeds into circularity and the community. Yeah. They've trained their own community of women, and this is where the work gets exponential.
Isn't it
it's
exciting?
Just like, how?
Yeah.
You know, Mohammed from Freetown just wrote me yesterday. He's like, I really want to work with you on this, which is music to my ears, because I'm hoping to work with the Ministry of Youth on a national talent search, not just for the models, but for all the people who feed into this industry.
Yeah.
The event producers, the, backstage, the digital marketing. There's so many touch points. Like for me, where I thought that fashion was starting to pigeonhole me, it's now liberated me because I have all these other things in the ecosystem that I have had a part in. So from a social innovation standpoint, the line is really just a channel. It's just a facilitator for me to do more of what I've gotten to do through Nudge and School. We'll have the Nudge entrepreneurs participate in whatever ways from all the things. There's just all these things that I can now feed into my clothing line. But what I'm really essentially doing is now positioning my brand at the forefront and letting everything else sort of funnel through me, because I have the most sort of leverage of a platform of all these things that I've built. And I think I should just be strategic about that, And so that's why I'm like more kind of stepping back into the public space and like owning my story. And for 5 to 6 years, I downplayed all of that for some reason.
But there was a moment where you said you were bored.
Yes.
In the fashion space.
I was.
You was like not interested anymore. And so what
switched?
What switched? What was the change?
I think a big part is school. I think a big part is knowing that if I produce in this way, then it has a multiplier effect. Like the more successful my clothing line gets, is the more impact it has. And so it's not just about the clothes. Whereas when I won Runway, it was really just about this sort of serving an audience that wanted to see a certain side of me and wanting to buy a certain product that to me wasn't that interesting. Like this whole idea of like flowy kaftans and like, I only made that because that's all I could sew, right? Like,
listen, I was getting there because that's all I could sew too. And I was like, I could go on Project Oh, am I good?
But that's the truth.
And it's so easy to make though.
It is. It's like 3 stitches in a straight line. How hard is it?
And you won. There were a lot of people I've heard.
You might know of.
Sure. Who, and they tend to come to me because at that time they wanted me to
say something,
be the voice of Caribbean fashion and say something about your winning and your sewing talent or lack thereof. And I was like, guys, I don't know her level of talent. I can't speak to it. I don't want to say, nah, Anya can't sew. I don't know that you can't sew.
Yeah.
You were on TV sewing.
I got better.
Yeah,
I got better.
Because you were trained by Delia. And great. But there were some people who had some really strong, big feelings about your winning Project Runway.
Yeah.
Did any of that come back to you? And how do you feel about that?
Listen, if I was on the other side, I probably would have felt quite similar. I was the one who was like the biggest imposter syndrome. Like, how did I reach it?
Right.
But again, I guess it comes back to like what I've experienced in my life is that things are not logical. And to take that win away would not have been taking it away from me. It would have been taking it away from all of us. And what good would that have served?
Exactly.
And like on top of that, it's like, it's not a sewing competition. It's a design competition. And as a collection, objectively, it was good enough.
It was pretty decent.
Right? Like,
I liked it.
I had a real like spiritual awakening moment in the hotel room before I went into the finals, and they sequestered us. We had no phones, we had no access to the world. And I sat in that room with my little hotel notepad and pencil, and I just heard Julian Alfred say this in her press conference winning in the Olympics, and it was so bonding for me. Because she woke up that morning and she said, I'm an Olympic champion. And she wrote, I'm an Olympic champion. And she said that in the press conference. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I sat there and I wrote it 6,000 times. I am winning Project Runway. I am winning Project Runway.
Write the vision and make it plain.
I'm telling you, I stood in the mirror. I had nothing else to do. I stood in the mirror in this tiny little hotel.
What manifestation is still manifestation?
I'm telling you, I said it till I believed it.
Yeah.
And I had a shift in myself that was gigantic for me.
Yeah.
Because up until then, as much of a nerd and a ballerina as I was, I always came second. I came second in class. I got the second best ballet marks for whatever that means. You know what I mean? I was always good. And I was always award winning, but never first. And in that room, in that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't deserve to win any more than anyone else, but I deserve to win as much as anyone else. And so if anybody wants to say I couldn't sew, listen, we all deserve to win.
Sure.
You just have to believe it. And I won out of the pure sense of pride and patriotism that I realized after coming out of being sequestered, because I didn't know for months what a big deal it was. I had no access to the internet. I didn't know people were like raving about this thing. I was just in my bubble.
We had a whole movement down here.
That's what I'm saying. And none of that was known to me.
Yeah.
I emerged back into the world to only find out people knew that I was doing this thing. And then I was like, I can't fucking lose.
You can't lose now.
Like, I have to win.
Because you know Trinidad is going to go ham if you lose.
Exactly.
And talk so much shit.
Correct. So the truth of the matter is you can't win either way.
Exactly.
Right? I shouldn't have won because I can't sew. If I didn't win, it would have been a disaster. So I might as well win.
And she didn't even win.
I might as well win. And I won.
Either way.
No, like seriously, I think from a technical standpoint, sure, it could have been better. From a brand Caribbean standpoint, look at what I won with. It could not have been more Caribbean.
Yeah.
And that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
You know? But to say I want to sew kaftans the rest of my life, no. Like, since I don't have to sew, I'm reinvigorated by the incredible talent that we have at school. Miss Rose, who came from UTT and is the giant from a technical and design standpoint, she's working with me on the design developments of my line. James Hackett, like, now I can supplement my lack of technical skill and focus on what I'm good at. And truly, that's what designers do. Designers are not sitting in a room sewing.
Exactly.
You know? So
I heard a rumor, and I want you to clear it up for me. I heard, it's a wild rumor. It might be true, I don't know. But I heard you bought something from Macy's, cut the tag off and put your tag on it.
Huh. Well,
true or false?
No, false.
Okay, good.
I can't even begin to figure out
Address
what
it,
that
right?
would be, yeah. Have I not been inspired by existing silhouettes?
Who hasn't?
Of course.
Yeah.
Nothing's original.
I've seen and I mean, she might call me about this, but I've seen a mailing kite, like an old design. I can't remember who the designer was from, who the piece was from, but I've seen the silhouette.
Yeah.
I've seen the V at the back and whatever. And this is like the first kite, not the latest one. And I'm like, huh.
Yeah. And
Everything
you know
comes
mailing,
back.
you know, I mean, if you know mailing,
She's
you know
incredible.
how much kite flying and Easter means to her personally. Like, something she does with her grandchildren. It's something she personally loves to do. Whether or not she borrowed a silhouette and hybridized it, or whether or not it was a completely, like, accidental, like, you can't... Like, I'm designing right now, and the influences are all over.
But it's everywhere. And you can't fight it.
But
I don't know that you should.
I think it's good to at least, like I always say this to emerging local designers, for your own sake, try not to copy from, like, your neighbor. Like,
right.
We live in a small place.
Yeah.
Like, from a branding and marketing standpoint, that's why I've designed my own prints this time, because it's really hard to operate in a small space where everyone's using the same fabrics, and I'm very print oriented, as you know. And
yes.
So as much of an investment it is, it's my way of actually making sure that no one can say that.
Exactly.
Because from a business perspective, even, like, it's important that there's a unique value proposition, that this sits in the market on its own, has its own voice. But to say you can avoid silhouettes that you've seen before, like, there's only so many ways.
It's impossible.
You know?
I know when you came out with your first line, like the first, and I still want one of those rompers that you had Pearl wearing,
Yes.
one of those rompers. Oh my God. It was African print and it was so perfect. And I remember another designer who also used African print was so upset because I've been using African print. And, you know, and she's great too, but it's like, if everybody getting the same cloth by Jimmy Abud though, like, how can we? What do you want her to do? Like,
So the collection is called Seen Unseen. similar to my first collection ever that was inspired by the Boba Shanti, you know, just seeing them walking up and down the highway selling nuts and looking fabulous.
Yeah.
I tend to find inspiration in people who aren't necessarily trying to be stylish. And so this collection is inspired by the people you see all the time, you know, cutting at the side of the road, you know, taking care of landscaping and always wrapping their heads in t-shirts and like finding ways to be individualized despite what I think could be a form of suppression of the individuality, you know? So the whole idea of making the unseen seen and then conceptualizing that across the entire way the show is going to happen, this whole sort of national youth search for talent to again bring the unseen into the scene, and the way in which school does that, the way in which House of Vetiver does that, the way in which giving people voice who are most often overlooked. So for me, it's using the vehicle of fashion and my natural talent and my platform to tell stories around things that matter to me. It's not about the clothes.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that I have this ability to tell stories in this way, and I've gotten better and better at like encapsulating that and also strategizing how that impacts people in tangible ways in their life. And that, when I think about the number of people we might be able to employ to be a part of this event, to work as models, discover a talent that could become their life, you know, the women who will produce the line, the vetiver communities who will tangibly have economic independence out of these things, that is what lights me up.
That's amazing. In one of our previous conversations, you also said that through all of your reinventing of yourself, you ultimately were trying to get to the fullest expression of a woman. And now so much of your work involves women, at-risk women, migrant women, you know, communities of women, villages that you've been building over the years. What does the fullest expression of a woman look like?
I think that is expressed very singularly by the woman and is entirely unencumbered by the definition of woman that society has. And so therefore, I can only express what the fullest expression of me is. And it's also evolving constantly, because I didn't know I was going to become a wife. I didn't aspire to become a mother. And now that I am, the fullest expression of me has to include all of that. And is, it's a moment-to-moment navigation of what is that
day by day.
fullness. Yes, you know, that what is that? The fullness, I think, is the truth. Living it truthfully in a moment-to-moment way, and trusting that it will be felt and it will be received and it will be honored.
Yeah. Heavy on the honored.
You know? Like, I just want to be me. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to be vexed about it. Like,
yeah, just do your thing.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
I think in the Caribbean context, and of course Trinidad is my most, you know, where I know the best, there is still a lack of value given to the creative currency. And so fighting for a certain level of acknowledgement financially and economically and from a business perspective, that still happens. I don't feel like it's just sort of a given that, like, you know, if you're a musician or an artist or a dancer or a designer, like, you play in the same economic field as a banker, a lawyer, a business person, right? Like, this is like unspoken devaluation of creative currency, which we fight against, and we have to constantly value it by some other means, you know? However, I would say that the more truthful answer is that the ceiling that I have now is really mine. It's still my imposter syndrome around being a creative, about owning that as my actual profession. Like, I think I've spent the last 5 years trying to validate myself in other rooms, in other ways, in other spaces, to just prove like I can be both, you know? And it's so tiring. Like, I'm so much more myself when I am just in this world. And I mostly enjoy because I love being around these people.
Yeah.
Not to say anything about those people, but, and that those people, there are a lot of these people in those rooms too, but it's so not given room to be creative in all spheres. to be creative in business boardrooms, to be creative in all settings. That there's this like dichotomy that I feel. So I think that ceiling is really my, I need to remove that ceiling for myself and just let it flow and trust that I can be as financially and, sort of successfully abundant as anyone else. But I do genuinely think that's going to have to happen more outside of this context, because I struggle to make that. Well, first of all, just not enough scale and all the real reasons that it's hard to build businesses here. But besides that, like, I know that I'm holding myself back still from the global success that I know I can have. And that is just my journey to uncover.
Why was it important for you to, at that time, be successful in those rooms? Why did you seek it out?
By then I had started 10 small businesses over the years. You know what this is like.
No.
And building businesses or validating social enterprise, social entrepreneurship with my own resources was just, I had reached a ceiling with that. And the writing is on the wall. I mean, not just the success, largely because of the financial and non-financial contribution that Massey made it. Like generosity of another level to believe in this vision. And what we were able to do with that level of financial strength is evident.
Yeah. Why do you think it took so long for something like that to happen though?
Timing, I think for me anyway in my life, I don't know in the grand scheme of things, why not? But definitely for me it was timing and experience to know like I could only do so much with what I had alone. Yeah. I could only do so much by the sort of linear, like, let's make this money over here and then put it over here and then bootstrap and,
and chunks here and then there. Yeah.
Whereas like, okay, here's an entity that has the finance, has the, all the sort of, governance and operational strength that I didn't have. And here's it being applied to my creativity and my strategy and my vision and my networks and look what happens. So for those reasons, I felt like it was important that I could stay in those rooms and speak to the work and own the vision and own the practicality of what was happening too, I've learned a lot over the last 5 years. As much as it's been a transition and a little bit out left of who I naturally am, I feel like I did some kind of social enterprise masters.
You're right.
In the last
OJT kind of.
Yeah, legit. Some kind of degree could come out of it. And underlying all that is still this desire to prove that I can be in certain rooms. Yeah. I don't know. That goes back to my childhood, that's important. Yeah. But now I can safely say that it's good to have people like us in those rooms, and it's good to have that diversity of thoughts, and it's good to have that level of creativity. And I'm proud that we were able to do that,
Mm-hmm. When you think about your entire life, which I know it's a lot, because you've achieved a lot, you've lost a lot, you've gained a lot. I have a very intimate relationship with failure, but I try to switch it around and learn from it and all that good stuff. And I don't imagine that you've not failed. But what moment in your life do you think has shaped you the most?
Well, hands down, my brother dying. Which I don't consider failure, obviously.
No. But a moment.
Yes. There's before Pilar and after Pilar.
Yeah.
And it's probably not the easiest thing to say, especially to the many people who have lost people in their lives, but it formed me. It has formed me in a way that I cannot imagine my life without it having happened. I'm not saying that I think it was a good thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it was good for me. It has and continues to be what has exposed me to experience of a divine life. I grew up very religious, Catholic, but I did not understand spirituality until he died. And I didn't understand my relationship to the divine until that moment that he was gone. But he wasn't gone.
Yeah.
He isn't gone, you know? And I live in this intimate conversation with him 17 years later. You know, as you know, I named my first line after him. I did it because he died at 18, I was 25. And I was like, I cannot live half a life when he only got to live till 18. I have to live a full life. Mm-hmm. Everything changed. You know, I thought I had this great life living in New York, working in Soho, you know, Sex in the City vibes. Mm-hmm. And, but it was nothing after that. I came home and I was like, I have to live fully.
Yeah.
And everything I have, everything I've experienced, the highs, the lows. I think the reason why I don't consider I've had a tremendous amount of failures is because I intentionally live on the extremes.
Right.
I intentionally seek out the best, which inevitably means you experience the depths of the worst. I can't be in between.
What was that day like when you found out?
I didn't know the day he died. I was in Vermont, uncharacteristically out of range. I always have my phone. Mm-hmm. Very uncharacteristically out of range, and everybody tried to call me. It was Saturday, May 26th at this time of night, and nobody could find me, and everybody was searching for me until the next day. Somebody found me eventually, and I collapsed. I mean, like, as you see on TV, like, it's real. Like, my legs fell from under me. I couldn't fathom what this meant. I collapsed. And then I don't know what happened between then, not even having my passport, having to get to another state to get a passport, to get on a plane, to get to Trinidad. I have no recollection. All I remember after that was being on the plane, and the front cover of our beloved newspapers, a picture of my brother dead on the cover, on the highway. Thankfully with a cloth over him. But, you know, between then and then, I have no memory of what happened, and came back to, of course, the flurry of, 5 people died that day.
Yeah.
And it was a chaotic, extremely emotional, difficult time for many families all at once. And that went on for at least 6 months to a year of just being in a daze. Somewhere in there I went and auditioned for Miss Universe.
Yeah.
But all of that was in a daze of trying to find meaning and purpose, and how do I live this child's life on his behalf. He was 7 years younger than me. Our relationship was not like my brothers and him. They were friends. He was my younger brother, So my relationship was very much like older sister, and but in his death, we've become very spiritually close, and I walk with him.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
No problem. So we'll ask you something else, and now I forgot. It's a weird segue. You said before you didn't think you would be a wife. Mm-hmm. And so there was a period where, okay, you and Wyatt, you're together. And then there was a long break. I know a lot of people are curious about the break, but there was a long break, and you had another relationship in between and all that good stuff, and lots of chatter about that as well.
Yes.
And then you all got back together and got married.
Yes.
Which was not so much a surprise, but it was like, cool, What was that break like? What happened there?
Hold for a minute, you're gonna leave it there.
What about the
break? That break was, again, me, in honest, truthful self-discovery, and wanting to honor a side of me that I already knew was there, being bisexual, and wanting to honor that beyond sexuality, and really gave me a way to know a side of myself that in a heterosexual relationship, I guess, naturally it's different, like a different kind of energy, different kind of intimacy, different kind of interaction of myself, like seeing myself differently too, and it gave me space, I guess, to like discover just a more like I didn't do a lot professionally in that time. That was like, I mean, I did, but I was kind of just more like, I settled into who I was and what I was doing, and we traveled a lot and we did a lot of Anya brand things, which was fun, and it was nice to kind of just do that, because that then led into home, which really was another sort of professional, energetic, like I had to build this whole business, and so it was fun, it was light, it was like, she really took care of me, which I think I needed. Not to say that what I didn't and does not still, but just a different energy, and she, just sort of gave me a space to just relax, like it's okay, Anya.
Soft space to land,
yes,
kind of
exactly.
vibe. Yeah.
But more than anything, it was that sort of journey of knowing that my sexuality was not necessarily like I think I had to know for myself that it was not just like a trend,
Yeah.
It was not just for attention, because believe me, being in a relationship that was blatantly like a choice and had longevity and was here, like we lived here, it was not easy.
Yeah, I can't imagine it was.
But it was real, and I wanted to honor that, and I wanted to own it, and I wanted to be very much like, not for the sake of anyone else, but for my sake, and for that to happen, it had to happen that way. It couldn't be behind closed doors, then I wouldn't have experienced it in the way that I needed to.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was full, and I am very grateful for that, and for all the people who in their silent ways honored it, because that wasn't easy for them either. My friends, my family. It's one thing to be like, oh, Anya, she's wild, and it's another thing. This is legit. Like, this is a real relationship, And it definitely wasn't easy for a lot of the people closest to me to reconcile with that. And I'm grateful for all the people in my life who left space for that,
I remember you made a post, I think it was when you and Wyatt got engaged, and you said, I resisted and resisted and resisted, and finally here we are, or something like that. Why do you think you were resisting before?
I think, so somewhere in the through line of seeking out a certain level of independence from an identity standpoint, which included leaving room for being bisexual and having a variety of different types of relationships, and living in New York for a long time where there's not a lot of construct imposed on you.
Yeah.
And then like coming from a place like this where the opposite. The resistance was more that, like, I don't want to conform. But at a certain point, am I anti-conformist against myself?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, am I resisting against something I actually want? And am I, like, had I held on for too long to some sort of defiant identity? Because out of all that defiance that came out of the sex tapes also became an identity.
Right.
Like Anya the Rogue.
Right.
Which is still my Twitter name.
Yes.
Right?
Which you are never checking.
Never
Because we
checking.
tag you all the time. And you
Oh, God. To get the team on that.
Keep one thing for yourself.
Yeah, that became an identity, and I think identities can be, Stockholm syndromes. Like, you can hold on to it longer than it actually is real.
Yeah,
and I think
longer than it serves you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to a large degree, the resistance around that was really not wanting to accept that I could be so normal.
Normal is not necessarily basic, so you're fine.
No, I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, I mean, Wise and I have had a journey,
Yeah.
and it has, gone its where it was going, and I needed to let that be, and I wanted to let that be, and like, you know, here we are. And it was, yeah, I remember the first few months of being married being like, wow, this is amazing. Why did I take so long to just succumb to the love?
Glad to find a man, boy. God damn.
Then children come and things change, and you know.
Yes.
But no, I mean, truthfully, the surrender to the love and to the surrender to the way love, the marriage being an expression of that love was really beautiful. And I had to gift myself that against, you know, the
You
wall.
seem happier. Like you seem content. You know, I know you're the busiest person in the world and you never check your WhatsApp, but it's fine. But you seem like just happy. And I love that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You good?
Do it again.
One more for safety.